Good evening. Notice is hereby given of the regular meeting of the Board of Education of the Town of Westfield in the County of Union, New Jersey at 8 p.m. on the evening of Tuesday, November the 22nd, 2011, in the boardroom of the Administration Building, 302 Elm Street, Westfield, New Jersey. The purpose of the meeting is to transact the regular business of the Board and to transact any other business to come properly before the Board. This is to advise the general public and to instruct that it be recorded in the minutes that in compliance with Chapter 231 of the Public Laws of 1975, entitled the Open Public Meetings Act, the Westfield School Board on Friday, November the 18th, 2011, caused to be posted at the office of the Board of Education, located at 302 Elm Street, Westfield, New Jersey, and delivered to the Westfield Leader, the Star Ledger, the Westfield Library, Town Clerk of Westfield, Alternative Press, and Patch.com, a meeting notice setting forth the time, date, location of this meeting. Mr. Unero, could we have a roll call vote, please? A roll call, please.
Mrs. Walker?
Here.
Mr. Matesi?
Here.
Ms. Carey?
Here.
Mrs. Clancy?
Here.
Mr. Finn?
Here.
Mr. Friedman?
Here.
Ms. Kerstead?
Here.
Mrs. Lights?
Here.
Mr. Slade?
Here.
Thank you. Ms. Kerstead, could you lead us in the flag salute, please?
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I believe we have a table full of announcements this evening, so why don't we start at one end and work our way around. Mr. Friedman.
Okay. All of our schools participate in many different forms of charitable giving, especially this time of year. Students at Edison Intermediate School, for example, donated 10 food baskets, 37 frozen turkeys, and hundreds of pounds of assorted, non-perishable foods to the needy for Thanksgiving. The school-wide drive was organized by the Upstanding Citizens Council, a newly formed group of 49 eighth graders whose counselors encouraged the students to lead by example. Counselor Marcy Schoenbach explained that the students are learning to make service part of their lives so it becomes second nature. Students Rachel Levy, Marina DeCotis, and Felicia Murmur organized a bake sale raising $150 to purchase additional food. All of the food was brought to the Holy Trinity Food Pantry and the Mandy Reichman Feeding Program of Temple Emmanuel in Westfield. The UCC's next project will involve collecting games, books, cards, and activities to equip a homeless shelter's community room in Newark. The collection area will be in the lobby of Edison Intermediate School, 800 Rahway Avenue, in Westfield from November 28th through December 21st.
Wow. Thank you.
On Monday, November 21st, Roosevelt's 8th graders welcomed students from the Cedar Brook K-8 Center located in Plainfield. Both schools are participating in a collaborative project focusing on the study of mice and men, with its central motif being the pursuit of the American dream. Yesterday, the students from Westfield and Plainfield shared their contemporary visions of the American dream and compared and contrasted their views. Technology teacher Pam Friedman created a wiki that the schools will be using to communicate and jointly answer study questions and debate points in the novel. Roosevelt students will be traveling to Plainfield on January 9th for a wrap-up activity discussing the final controversial events in the book and then watching the film version.
Thank you. Mr. Finn.
Thank you. From high school sports, congratulations to the Westfield High School boys cross-country team for winning the Group 4 state championship for the third straight year. And this past Saturday, at the Meet of Champions, the team finished third, 1 point behind the second-place team. In the process, the boys recorded the fastest five-man average in school history. Jack Leahy led the team, finishing 8th. Jack's time was 1 second off the school record held by Jeff Perella and the late Cliff Sheehan. Jack was followed closely by John Kerna, Matt Lupino, Kevin Ingram, David Carville, Kevin Smith, and Evan Tarlow. The team will compete this Saturday, November 26th, at the Nike Northeast Regionals. The top 2 teams qualify for the national championships in Portland, Oregon. Our team is currently ranked 3rd in the region. We wish the team continued success.
Thank you.
Fine Arts. The drama competition team participated in the Rumson Country Day School Forensic Competition this Saturday, November 19th, with outstanding results. First place overall, Isabella Gelfand, declamation category, 8th grade. Fourth place overall, Daniel Colho, declamation category, 9th grade. Fourth place overall, Sophie Hurwitz and Sarah Finkel, dramatic pairs category, 7th grade. Fourth place overall, Julian Mazzella, declamation category, 6th grade. 21 students represented the Westfield Public Schools, with over 200 students and 10 schools participating in the festival from all over New Jersey. Congratulations to our students, and thank you to the Westfield Coalition of the Arts, who have helped to give these students the opportunity to attend these events.
Wonderful. Go ahead, Jenny.
This is from the world of high school academics. Results are in for the Advanced Placement World Language exams administered in the spring, with 75% of the Westfield High School students who tested achieving high scores of 3, 4, or 5. The national average was 62%. We congratulate our world language students on these AP exams and on the national exams in which they also excelled. More information about these achievements can be found at the district website /news.
Super. Thank you.
Also from the high school, Westfield High School students and staff from the Habitat for Humanity Club, which is newly formed at our high school, participated in their first build in Plainfield on November 11th. The students and teachers were given instructions on installing siding to the outside of a house and worked on that for several hours. Their next build will take place on December 17th in a multi-family dwelling in Summit. There are more than 40 members of the Habitat for Humanity Club, recently started by Westfield High School social studies teacher Trish Iannuzzi. Last year, she applied for the Teachers Fellowship Program with Habitat and was one of 10 teachers chosen from across the United States to participate in a week-long build in Tennessee. When the fellowship program concluded, the school year began. Ms. Iannuzzi started the club in order to see the students embrace the spirit of advocacy, to speak out for something they believe in, and to work towards changing systems, policies, and attitudes. She is hopeful that their efforts in Habitat for Humanity will ultimately raise awareness about the cause of poverty and homelessness. Very nice.
And back to academics, Westfield High School has received notification that 8 students earned a perfect score of 800 on the SAT or the SAT-2 subject tests taken in October of this year. These students and the subjects in which they received a perfect score are as follows: Arjun Asija, Math 2; Amanda Earl, Math; William Gagan, Math; Jeffrey Marino, Math and Writing; Jason Kin, Reading, Math and Writing; Matthew Ragoza, Math 2; Nicholas Zarodny, Reading and Writing; and Rebecca Zhang in Writing. Congratulations to all of these scholars.
Wow.
All right, congratulations to Franklin music teacher Barry Fuhrer, who had an article published in the October-November 2011 British Music Journal, the Brass Herald. The article is titled "An Invasion on English Soil 100 Years Ago." Congratulations.
Wow. We're 13 weeks into the school year, and we have now had scholars, athletes, fine arts, teachers who are published, and teachers who are recognized nationally. It's off to a good start. On behalf of the Board of Education, I'd like to wish our entire Westfield community a wonderful Thanksgiving holiday, and our next Board of Education meeting will be on December the 6th. All right. We can recognize the public for any agenda items. Seeing no one approach the podium, Dr. Dillon.
Thank you. Tonight for Superintendent Reports, we actually have 2 different reports, and they're basically updates, to tell you the truth. And the first one has to do with the Code of Conduct. So the Code of Conduct, if you stop and think for just a minute, there are a lot of documents we have to prepare as a district and that are presented at this board table. But there aren't too many that are more important than a Code of Conduct. It's what we determine as a district is important, what behaviors we think are important. So we've given it a great deal of thought. It's been discussed at this board table before, and a lot of people have volunteered and spent time to try to make our revision of our Code of Conduct a worthwhile one. So to revise our code this year, the Policy Committee of the board certainly looked at it, took a looked at what some other districts have been doing, but then we established a committee made of community members. And we have developed quite the committee, who has been an active committee, who's accomplished a great deal of work, really took the job to heart, and we've been very pleased with that. Mrs. Clancy and Mrs. Kerstead from the board serve on this committee. They're the board representatives, and I'm on the committee as well. In addition, we have representatives from the business community, from health fields, from law enforcement, we have parents, a teacher, a counselor, a supervisor, and we have students. The formal work of the committee is actually going to be presented to the board for first reading at the December 13th board meeting. I'm not going to attempt to present everything tonight, but I wanted to highlight a few things so members of the community who are interested can prepare and be here on the 13th and participate and make suggestions as well. So the committee, working very hard, one of the things they did was to define core ethical values for the entire Westfield community, Westfield school community. The core ethical values that they've identified are honesty and integrity, a strong work ethic, and good sportsmanship. And from these three major points, we've then developed the rights and the responsibilities for students, for parents, and for all staff members. They're spelled out pretty clearly in the document, as are expected behaviors and also anticipated consequences. Again, the details will come on December 13th, but what I'd like to stress now is our focus is the ethical core ethical values of honesty and integrity, a strong work ethic, and good sportsmanship. And I believe if we all think about that a bit, we know that much of what happens is distilled down to those basic core ethics. I don't know if either Mrs. Kerstead or Mrs. Clancy wants to add anything to that since they've been active on the committee.
It was a great experience, and everyone worked really hard, and time well spent, and really thank the community members for coming out. That always, I find, to be one of the most rewarding experiences at the board table is when we work through committee with involving the community. So thanks.
Look forward to it.
And the next update has to do with fall is a season of reports for public school districts in New Jersey. There are just so many reports that need to be submitted to Trenton. And tonight, myself and Dr. Weissman are going to highlight two of those reports. One of the reports deals with enrollment. It's not a projection of enrollment. It's actually just a reporting of enrollment. And there's a very specific date. It is the students who are actually in attendance on a very specific date. This year it was October 14th. So the data we're seeing today is the data based just on that. There's also a different report that talks about special education and the various programs that are offered to meet the needs of our specific students in Westfield. And Dr. Weissman's going to talk about that after I go over the enrollment numbers that are listed. All right, starting with our upper grades, you can see that in our high school, it's interesting how closely our 4 grades in the high school, their enrollments are really rather close. They're right around the mid-range of the 400s there. Okay? So in our high school, we certainly have been experiencing growth, but the growth from last year to this year really was not significant. It was a very small growth for this year. But if we go to the intermediate grades, those are the grades we've been talking about for many years since they've entered our school district, and the grades are certainly a bit higher, with 8th grade being above 500, 7th grade certainly below, but 6th grade, one of our largest classes, being in the mid-500s. Those are the ones we've been preparing all along as they've gone through elementary and now in intermediate, and have already been discussing what will happen as the high school gets a bit larger because of those large grade sizes. When we move to the elementary grades, we can still see one very large grade, actually our largest, our current 4th grade of 563 students, with most of the other grades, 1, 2, 3, and 5, hovering around 500 basically. And then we can see, we always see a drop-off to kindergarten. Our kindergarten is a half-day program, and many parents for several years, I think as long as I've been in the district, have chosen to send their students to full-day programs. So there is no doubt that that number will be higher next year. We always see quite an increase going into 1st grade. And then something new on the list this year are pre-kindergarten students who are general education students. This year we for many, many years, actually decades, we've had a preschool program that works with disabled students. But this year, we have a program where regular education students and students who have disabilities are in the same class. It was the first year we've done it. We're very happy that we have 14 students from the general education population who are part of it, and then at least a matching amount from the disabled student population. So that number is a new one this year. I've just highlighted basically the students who attend classes in a regular education program in the district. But when we include all of our students, including some of the ones Dr. Weissman will be talking about, our total enrollment for the district, total including just students who reside here but attend special education schools outside the district, our total enrollment is 6,350 students. Okay. And that, the report to the state has to make clear exactly where each of those students is accounted for, and that work has been accomplished over the last few months in the district. That indicates we're just a little bit smaller than we were last year, approximately 20 students less than last year. So that's just an overview of the enrollment. And with that, I'm going to turn over the next section to Dr. Weissman to talk about special education.
Okay. I'm going to begin by talking a little bit about our district special education data. Of the total number of students that Dr. Dolan just spoke of, 1,188 students are eligible for special education and related services. Of those students, 104 students are presently in out-of-district placements. Out-of-district placements include private special education placements for students who only have special needs, as well as students who are at commission programs, for example, Union County Educational Service Commissions, Morris Union Jointure Commission, as well as other placements in public schools. We also presently receive 3 tuition students, one from Winfield, one from Mountainside, and one from New Providence. This next slide depicts the continuum of services that school districts are required to provide to students with special needs. And our goal, the law actually requires us to provide services to students with special needs in what's called the least restrictive environment. So the least restrictive environment begins at the bottom of the pyramid with number 1. And when we are providing services to students with special needs, we take into consideration how we can provide services to students in the general education setting with supports. So number 1, for example, would be general education with support. An example of that would be an in-class support model, where a student might be provided with special education supports with the assistance of a special education teacher or a paraprofessional within the general education setting. So the student would have optimal opportunities to be exposed to students in the general education setting. When that's not appropriate for students, we begin to move up the triangle to more restrictive environments, and the next step would be to look at pull-out support or pull-out replacement programs. This, depending on the student's needs, it might look like a program where a student is provided with supports in a resource room for one content area, for example, reading or mathematics, or they might be provided with support in a resource room for multiple academic subjects. The purpose is to provide more individualized instruction and support in a smaller setting for students who require that level. More restrictive environment might be a specialized resource programs where a student is being provided with support in a pull-out program with a resource room teacher or a special education teacher for a number of subjects. Typically, it's for 3 or 4 academic subjects. The student would be transitioning less throughout the school day and would be provided with greater individualized instruction. A more restrictive environment would be a special class, which is also known as a self-contained class, but the state likes us to use the phrase special classes. And then, obviously, the most restrictive environment would be a separate private school. And the reason this is considered restrictive is because the students would have less opportunity to interact with students in general education programs. We do everything that we can to make sure that when we're considering programs, we are looking at the least restrictive environment for our students. That is always a consideration when we're developing individualized education programs for our students. For the, moving forward through the presentation, I'm going to be focusing on items 3 and 4, our specialized resource programs and our special classes within the district. We'll look at each grade level, and I'll explain to you the types of programs that we have that are specialized for our students in Westfield, as well as I'll talk about some immediate needs for the district programs and some longer-term projected needs. At our primary levels, ages 3 to 7, as Dr. Dolan mentioned earlier, we have an integrated preschool program that's designed for students in special education so that they have opportunities to be educated with students in general education. We also offer a preschool disabled program, which is a more intensive program, and our class sizes are smaller in our preschool disabled program, so it provides for greater individualized instruction, small group instruction, as well as focus on skills. We have our Leaps and Bounds program, which is our program designed for autism, and I'll describe that program in a little bit greater detail later on in the presentation. And we also have our transitional kindergarten program. At our elementary level, grades 1 to 5, we have a learning language disabilities class, which is a self-contained program. We have 4 classes, and we have our Leaps and Bounds classes, which is the, again, that's the program for autism. We have 2 classes at our elementary levels. Our intermediate programs, we have an iPrep, which is the intermediate prep program. It's a specialized resource program for students who require more structure, less transition, and individualized academic instruction. This is not a self-contained class. Again, it's a specialized resource program. Students have their programs with multiple teachers, but it's in a more structured setting. And again, they experience less transitions throughout the day, and it's more of a sheltered type of program. And this is available for students grades 6 through 8.
At both schools?
This is presently at Edison School. For our high school, grades 9 to 12, our specialized programs include a prep program, which also, again, is a specialized resource program with modified academics for students with cognitive, academic, social, and emotional needs. And we have a bridge program, which is a specialized resource program with a focus on counseling and behavioral supports. One of the identified needs, this is an immediate need due to increased enrollment at our preschool program. There is a need for an additional Leaps and Bounds class for our students aged 3 to 5. One of the reasons for this is it's a good thing. It's been an extremely successful program, Leaps and Bounds program, and we are at capacity in terms of the number of students that we can service in our present programs. One of the challenges of providing a preschool disabled program for students aged 3 to 5 is the way we receive our referrals. They come to us on a rolling basis, either directly from a parent or through early intervention. We don't know a year ahead of time or when we're budgeting necessarily who our students are going to be for our preschool program. We typically get referrals about 110 to 120 days prior to the child turning 3, typically through early intervention providers. So we can't always accurately project on a regular basis what our needs will be. So sometimes we have to make adjustments during the school year. This is has been, as I mentioned, a very successful program. It's a very cost-effective program. When you compare the costs of providing an autism program for students in a special private placement, this also provides opportunities, again, for students to be around typical peers and have those opportunities to be educated in the least restrictive environment with general education students. The methodology of our Leaps and Bounds program requires a small student-to-teacher ratio. So we strive to keep those class sizes small, which is, again, highlights the need for an additional class for our 3 to 5 program. The methodology of our Leaps and Bounds programs is called Applied Behavioral Analysis, which is also known as ABA. It is a data-driven approach. It involves a highly technical method of instruction, discrete trial. For those of you who may not be familiar with programming for autism, it is the acceptable method of instruction for children on the autistic spectrum. It does require a full day due to the intensity of related services that these students provide. So again, it's been extremely successful, and creating an additional class will be a huge benefit to our students. Some of the projected needs of the department, these are longer-term projections based on some research and looking at the programs now in terms of our classification rates, looking at students who may be going out of district. We're presently exploring how we can expand our Leaps and Bounds program to continue to meet the needs of our students on the autistic spectrum. So we're presently looking at how we may expand from the elementary level up through the intermediate level. And we are also looking at the possibility of creating a bridge program at the intermediate level to address the needs of middle school students who require academic, behavioral, and emotional support. That has been a successful program at the high school level as well.
Any questions?
What kind of funding do you think you would need for the intermediate school bridge program?
The program would require a full-time special education teacher. Because of the state laws for highly qualified requirements, we would need to find somebody who is highly qualified in all academic areas. So we would have to find somebody who is highly qualified in language arts, math, science, and social studies, which is a challenge to find.
Yeah, and a special education.
There's the possibility of doing a specialized type of resource program like we do at the high school, where we have two, maybe 3 teachers servicing that program or servicing the students in that program. But it would require a dedicated teacher for that program, because those students would most likely need to be in one location for a good part of the day. And then there would also be a therapeutic component for a program like that, so there would need to be counseling supports. Whether that was contracted out or whether it was someone on staff would be something we would have to determine based on the number of students and the frequency of service. And usually a program like that would require a paraprofessional, so that there's two adults in the room.
Staying on the question of resources and expenses, you talked about the Leaps and Bounds program needing another teacher. So can you kind of walk us through, let's say, the ballpark cost of another teacher versus the cost if we didn't and we couldn't handle the number of children that we had?
Well, for example, if it cost probably anywhere between $75,000 to $90,000 for a teacher with benefits, depending on where they are. in the scale. Right now, I can tell you that I have 3 students who've been identified by the Child Study Team who need this program, who are turning 3 within a few months, and it could cost per student anywhere between $45,000 to $95,000, sometimes more, plus transportation. That's again per student, to send them to a private school that would provide the same method of instruction. So it would cost us 3 times the amount to not create a program, roughly, if not more. And then if we get another student from early intervention, you do the math, it starts to add up.
So there's an ROI on keeping them in district, and they can matriculate with friends and what have you.
There's an educational benefit as well as a cost benefit for creating the additional class, absolutely.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
On this note of another pre-K leaps and bounds class, facility-wise, there's room at Lincoln?
Yes.
There is room?
Yes,
Okay.
Ms. Zavitz and I have identified in a very appropriate space.
Because I know that's always been one of the things keeping us from bringing children back in district or having them not go out in the first place. I had a question about the 4 boxes here on the leaps and bounds, how you explain that. Can you talk a little bit more about data-driven? What did you mean by that, and how does that play into the whole program?
ABA, applied behavioral analysis, encompasses a lot of different methods. One of the components of ABA is discrete trial approach, where the teacher is working one-on-one with a student, or maybe with 2 students, and they're prompting the student to do certain activities or perform something educational, and the teacher collects data on the student's performance. So if the student gets an answer right or does something correctly, they keep track of it. They will make a check mark on a data sheet, and they will figure out the percentage. So they'll do, for example, this can be modified and it looks different depending on the student, but they will keep data on everything the student does, and they'll keep track. So if they do 10 trials of something, whether it's to ask the student to write their name or to recite the alphabet, they'll do it 10 times, and they'll keep track of what percentage the student gets is correct in their responses. And it gets charted and graphed. They follow a curriculum, and they measure progress based on the student's performance. And all the data gets measured on a regular basis. So they would collect data daily, graph it weekly. It's a highly technical method of instruction, and it's ongoing in terms of the data collection, and they analyze the data to determine the student's progress and what they need to do to move forward, how to make adjustments in the instruction. So it's a very involved process.
Okay, thank you.
It requires a lot of training and ongoing professional development for the teacher and staff in those programs.
Mike, we started with sort of just general comments on overall enrollment and some trends. How should we be thinking about that with respect to special education? Should we expect the trends to be similar? Are there things you could draw from that? And if so, is there anything we can do now? Or is it a year-to-year sort of analysis?
It is sort of a year-to-year analysis. I think that the trends in terms of our numbers is fairly stable. We've gone up because our enrollment has gone up, but our percentages of classified students has remained roughly the same. The trends are in the types of disabilities that our students may have, and the types of services that they require. There is clearly an increase or an influx in the number of students on the autistic spectrum, and that's not unique to Westfield. That's nationwide. So we're making adjustments to meet the needs of our students. But looking at this is a good opportunity because we're looking at this preschool cohort, and we want to continue to develop the programs so that they grow with them, and so that we will look and make adjustments. That's why I mentioned looking at our elementary leaps and bounds programs, as well as how we would develop leaps and bounds programs at the intermediate level and into the high school. That's a longer-term project, but we need to sort of stay ahead of the curve and look at 2 years from now, 3 years from now, as opposed to tonight we're talking about an immediate need, but the real work and planning is in developing programs that will continue to meet the needs of our students in district so that we don't have to send them out.
Thank you.
So on that note, not that I'm looking for numbers, I know this, at this table, there's a desire to start thinking about how the budget process will work and what would be needed. So in furtherance of Mr. Friedman's question, it's not just a teacher that the district might need to add with the growth of this particular class, but we'd probably be looking at paraprofessionals, I'm assuming, listening to your explanation of the data collection, and then related services, looking at your four pieces.
Right. Based on the staffing in the present 3 to 5 year old program, it looks like we can move existing staff into a new program if we change, if we reorganize and shuffle the class around a bit. That's something we have to take a look at. So we may be able to use existing staff, whether it be from that class or from another program, to support, in addition to the teacher, the students in that class.
Okay, great.
The district has never had an intermediate level autistic class. Are there any models that you're looking at, any other public districts that are doing that with success that we could count on?
Yeah, there are absolutely other districts where we can look at models, and that is definitely how I would proceed with that, is to look at other models that have been successful in other districts and see how we can emulate that and adjust it to meet the needs of our students. Absolutely.
All right. Thank you very much. So at this juncture, I would ask the board to approve the minutes of the board meetings held on October the 18th, November the 1st, and the private minutes of November the 1st. May I have a second, please? Thank you. Does anybody have any comments? All right.
I'll just note that I abstained from the first. I wasn't looking at it.
Okay. Mrs. Light?
Yes, I want to thank Mr. Yanero for revising the minutes of October 18th, long-range planning report.
Okay. Thank you. So, all those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Great, we're approved. Mrs. Clancy, personnel.
Okay, I would like to ask for the board's approval of personnel items number 1 through 20 on the agenda, as well as addendum item number 21. Oh,
Pulling 19.
okay. So please take out item number 19.
Mrs. Light?
I'll second.
Thank you. Any comments or questions on personnel items? On the table? All right. Let's have a vote.
Mrs. Lights?
Yes.
Ms. Carey?
Yes.
Mrs. Walker?
Yes.
Mr. McChesney?
Yes.
Mrs. Clancy?
Yes.
Mr. Finn?
Yes.
Mr. Friedman?
Yes.
Ms. Kerstaff?
Yes.
Mr. Slavin?
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carries. Facilities, Mrs. Clancy.
Okay, a lot of paper tonight. Okay, facilities met last week as well as at 7 o'clock this evening. So I will give you as best an update as I can. Last week we discussed, the first thing we discussed was our building usage. We met with Mike Morris and Sandy Mamery to try to get an understanding of how scheduling happens throughout the facilities, particularly in our gyms. And I have to say that we walked away for a greater understanding and appreciation for the time that goes into scheduling our facilities. It really is quite an undertaking, and it keeps both the maintenance office and the athletic office very busy. So we thank them for that, because it's a lot to juggle. So we gathered a greater understanding of the scheduling, and possibly talked about ways of maybe streamlining some of it so that the two offices could work together. There's new software out, that type of thing that might help benefit both of them. We also talked a little bit about the building usage in terms of outside organizations, how there is a greater demand for our facilities, particularly the gym usage. And as we've seen with our fields, it's also now creating more wear and tear. So that discussion will carry on to our next meeting, where we will talk about the amount of gym time that's being utilized, as well as our fee structure for our facilities. So that was that portion of the meeting. We then had a presentation on solar, which is one of the reasons why we met at 7 o'clock. We are still gathering information. We have had 2 proposals come in. And Ryan Skirbo, the solar attorney, as well as Joe, who is the solar engineer, met with us last week and gave us some information regarding how the proposals would work. We then asked them to go back and gather some more information, so we had that discussion tonight. They will be gathering even further information. We will be talking to them again next Monday, and hopefully we'll have some presentation for the full board by next week, so that everyone can start to hear about, hopefully, an exciting solar proposal. We also then began our discussion of major and long-range capital projects. We're hoping to put together a 5-year plan. We had discussed a couple months ago that most of the projects on the previous plan have been covered and taken care of, and so now we're looking to move forward and also bring that forward once we're ready. We just sort of took an initial look at it. Mr. Yanero and Mike Morris will be going back and getting some estimates, from the list. Roofs being some of the top priorities, as we know, are on there.
If you wouldn't mind, just to tie all of that together for those who might not be following along quite as closely as the 9 of us.
Yeah.
About why there's so much data gathering on the solar and how it's tied to our roofs.
Sure. So one of the discussions that we started about a year ago was that the majority of our roofs, I say both, I don't know, are old and in need of repair. We did have some roof work done this past summer over Gym 5 and at the high school and at Lincoln School. So we did have an immediate need. But one of the ideas of the solar project coming up was that it was possible for a solar company to come in and do roof work and put their solar panels on top of the new roof and be beneficial to both our district as well as then energy efficiency, sustainability, and to the solar company, because they would buy back some of the energy if they put the money into putting the roofs on. So that's where that conversation really started. It's a very expensive job to put roofs on buildings, and this would be, a win-win situation. So did that tie that together?
Yes, because solar's in the news all the time, and how our job got to seem a little more complicated is
It is.
because of the goal that we set
Right.
for the project.
Right. And that's about the only other piece of it on our long-range plan, is we also started to have a discussion about the high school parking that we are hoping to hear back from the town, Public Safety Committee, so that maybe that can come back to facilities and we can have a discussion about that, because I know that's pending.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yep.
Mrs. Lights, long-range planning.
The superintendent has a meeting, an interview next week scheduled with a demographer. And I know we're researching the possibility of finding other districts who have used demographers to help us predict enrollment trends for the future.
Excellent. Thank you. Policies, I would ask that the board affirm the superintendent's decision on HIB incidents listed on the agenda for the reasons set forth therein. These are the ones that we have already addressed at this table.
Second.
Thank you. Since it is an affirm, I'm going to have a voice vote, so all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Is this from November 1 discussion?
It would be from November 1.
Yes.
I
Yes.
just abstained.
And then Mr. Matesic abstains,
So I should abstain as well.
as does Mrs. Carey. Yes, I remember. It was quiet on this corner. Mrs. Carey, curriculum.
I would ask the board to approve the following overnight field trips. There are 3 field trips for Westfield High School students. The first one is actually back on the agenda with revised dates. That is our trip to France, and I'm going to talk about that in a minute. And then the next one is Westfield High School students studying German to go to Idstein, Germany, and the proposed dates for that are February 17th through February 26th, 2012. And the third is Westfield High School students Model UN Club traveling to Hershey Convention Center, and that is January 6th through January 8th, 2012. So may I have a second?
Second.
Ms. Lights. Okay, so originally the French trip was scheduled to be during spring break. And what happened was the students that our students are going to visit were going to be having exams that week. So we had to move the trip up a week, which means that our students will actually miss an entire week of school. So the curriculum committee had some concerns about that. And we have worked closely with the administration to make sure that, number one, the department has secured appropriate French-speaking substitutes so that the children who are remaining at home have French-speaking teachers in the classroom. Number two, that they put together meaningful lesson plans so that instead of just watching a field trip or something, instead of just watching a movie or something, they have meaningful lesson plans, and we have all gone over those lesson plans. And then thirdly, that the students who are traveling to France understand that they are responsible for obtaining and completing all of the work from their other classes. We took a look at the field trip policy, and it states that in general, trips abroad should, which leaves room for the administration to make a call here, be scheduled during vacation periods. And Dr. Dolan may want to say a few words, but she has recommended that we go ahead, and the committee is also recommending that we go ahead. And the only other point that I wanted to make is that the cost of the substitutes, because there will be 3 of them full-time for a week, will be included in the cost of the trip. And I would just also note that, many of our field trips, the kids do lose time in school. I mean, the Model UN trip, it's over a weekend, but they lose Friday. And the German trip, they will also be losing 3 days. So while it's not optimal, it's not what we like to see, we do think that the administration and the supervisor and the teachers have all gone to great lengths to ensure that all the children are taken care of. So we would recommend that we approve it. I don't know if you want to add anything.
No, I think you explained it well, and the teachers at the high school certainly realize that in general, for a trip such as this, where the students are paying to go to a different country, or their families rather are paying to send them to a different country, it is certainly understood that it should generally be when our schools are closed. It just was not possible this year with conflicting calendars between countries. So, but they certainly understand that that should be the usual.
Any other questions?
Did we lose any participants because the date changed, or it's pretty much around the same?
I
Just curious.
don't believe we did.
They're not signing up until they get approval.
Right, they're still waiting
Okay.
for definitive
got it.
approval, but I haven't heard that there's been a big change.
Okay.
Okay. we can vote.
Ms. Carey?
Yes.
Mrs. Lights?
Yes.
Mrs. Walker?
Yes.
Mr. Matesic?
Yes.
Mrs. Clancy?
Yes.
Mr. Finn?
Yes.
Mr. Friedman?
Yep.
Ms. Kerstad?
Yes.
Mr. Slater?
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Matesic, finance.
I'd ask the board to consider finance motions 1 through 4. Second.
Second.
Any questions? Just short list of them.
Mr. Matesic?
Yes.
Mrs. Walker?
Yes.
Ms. Carey?
Yes.
Mrs. Clancy?
Yes.
Mr. Finn?
Yes.
Mr. Friedman?
Yes.
Ms. Kerstad?
Yes.
Mrs. Lights?
Yes.
Mr. Slater?
Yes.
I would ask the board to note the notes for the record, specifically that our new Assistant Superintendent of Curriculum will start on December the 5th. And is there any legislation to
I
report?
just have,
Oh, sorry.
I'm just curious if the terminations were brought back in district, or they just
The,
termination of
The-
placement? Yeah.
right, the second student actually never started. The second student, the family had registered them at the Union County Magnet School, but they had never started there, so it's post-dated to September 7th. And the other one, I have to admit, I don't believe I know that story.
All right.
Is there any legislation to report on? Is there any unfinished business? Is there any new business? Are there any ad hoc committee reports?
Just a statement. In following up with the wireless survey, I spoke to Brian Walker, and he had completed all of these drawings that the company needed in order to do the survey. He did a tremendous job in computerizing the entire school district of buildings. I want to give him great credit for that. And he told me today that they've started loading them into their wireless simulation software, and they anticipate delivering a completed report in early January. So we should, by early January, have the some of the numbers that we'll be looking at to have the whole district wireless.
Thank you. Any liaison reports? Okay, Mrs. Lights is, can we bounce back and forth? Because I think you have 4 to report on, right?
I might,
You might just. Why don't you start, and then we'll go to Ms. Kerstead, and you can take a moment. Oh, good, because we don't want to wear you out.
All right, I'll start with McKinley. I'm the liaison to McKinley School, and I attended their PTO meeting. I met the new shared librarian, or the librarian who is shared with Tamaqua School. Ms. Gonzalez, I think her name is. She is a ball of fire, energetic, wonderful with literacy, digital literacy. Gave a presentation using or walking around with her iPad and her overhead and for projected outcomes. I wish I could sit there in a class. She's going to be terrific. Kids are going to love her.
Super. Ms. Clancy, did you have one?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, I attended the Balance Committee meeting, which is a committee of parents, teachers, students, and representatives of the administration at the high school, looking at and discussing issues of student wellness. And this was just an introductory meeting, sort of getting people's ideas out on the table about their beliefs about student wellness in the high school. Our next meeting is December 8th, and we'll be focusing our discussion on a few broad questions. What does the culture of Westfield and Westfield High School do to encourage and or reward student overextension? How can we remove these rewards? In what ways do Westfield High School and Westfield parents encourage students' love of learning? And what messages do we send? What policies do we have that contradict our student wellness objectives? So we're asking some pretty difficult questions, and it's really an interesting group, a mixture, like I said, of students, parents, high school students, middle school, high school students, parents of high school children, parents of middle school children, and then some counselors and some teachers. And it's really great to see different people's perspectives and all coming together.
Great, thank you. Ms. Clancy?
Sure. I attended the Westfield Recreation Commission meeting Monday, November 7th. During the public portion of the meeting, Dan Duffy and Leo White came to talk about Gumpert 1. They're trying to get some work done there and hopefully create a state-of-the-art baseball. Not that that facility isn't already in great
Read my
shape.
mind, like, oh,
But
dear.
they want to just take it a little farther and get some work done over at Gumpert 1. So they're ready to get moving on that and looking forward to it. We had a program update from the Rec Commission, and I will help to extend a plea to parents for the night place. They are always very much in need for parent volunteers and chaperones, and they are really struggling and having to cancel the night place, which is a disappointment to the students. So if anyone out there would be able to volunteer some time there, it would be most appreciated. And then the other piece of it from the Parks and Fields Committee, the Union County Trust Fund that Bruce Kaufman applied for, we had discussed about a month ago, $150,000 for work at Jefferson Field as a joint project between the Recreation Committee and the Board of Education. And we received $35,000 of that application, which would be matched by user fees and Board of Ed. So we're probably, at this point looking at about $70,000 that would be available to do some work at Jefferson Field. So I think probably in January, the Facilities Committee will be getting back together again with the Rec Committee and have that discussion. We are still waiting for the work done on those storm drains that we had talked about. That is causing some of the problems over at Jefferson, and I believe that's going to be done after soccer season, so that should be coming shortly, and then we'll have a better idea of what needs to be done.
And that's separate and apart from the money that you just
That
discussed.
is, yes, that is town engineer work, so that's...
Helping us out.
Yep. Yep.
Super.
And that's it.
Thank you. And Mrs. Lights, PTC?
Yes, two things. Actually, three. I attended the Union County Ed Services Commission meeting, although that was not notable particularly. Westfield PTC General Membership Meeting discussed the Board of Education vacancy, the same status update on the Code of Conduct. And it was a very animated meeting. People brought up the question of teacher attendance at the NJEA convention. Time-old conversation about whether we should hold school on those days, pay for substitutes, and whether we had data about the numbers of teachers who attend.
Do we
Do we what?
have data on that?
Sometimes we collect it, yes. In the past, we have collected it, and there has been conversation about the cost of substitutes to the district. And that would go into policy committee for conversation again this year. The PTC Technology Committee has raised about $16,000 so far on designated funds, and we're all waiting to hear the update on the wireless report that Brian Walker will get in early January to us. So. And following up on the technology theme, in the afternoon of the same day, November 17th, I attended the Wilson PTO meeting, and I saw a terrific presentation, interactive technology presentation. Trista Nowicki and Jamie Lynn Garnecki using an interactive whiteboard, smartboard. There was terrific information being discussed and conversations. Brian Walker was there. Mark Friedberg was there. So it was great conversation and really whetting people's appetites. One of the most notable things I was able to see was in the library. the Wilson Library is the first school with multiple, I think it's called multi-seat
Yes.
computer hookups, so that there's one major CPU unit that's driving about 8 multiple monitors and individual software managers, so that students can sit at their own monitors and for a very reduced cost have the technology facility driving what they're doing independently. Cost comes down, teacher has the ability from their laptop to monitor everything that's going on everybody's screen, so that rather than walking around and looking over shoulders, it's actually across the room sighting that the teacher can accomplish. It's certainly beneficial for maintenance, equipment maintenance, so for troubleshooting and support. It's a big savings to the district, and I know we're looking forward to more of those opportunities, especially in library settings. And then, of course, computers that get installed in that manner, the computers that are taken out of that settings can be refreshed through other places in the district where computers are even older and less capable.
And we actually do have that in additional schools. It's something that Brian did bring to the attention of all of our administrators, and then we've been working wherever it makes sense and where we have the resources to include those. So we've actually installed a few of those at this point.
Good.
A number of them, actually.
Great to see. Thank you, Rosemary, for letting me go.
Thank you. Thank you, Mrs. Lights, very much. Anyone else?
For me.
So now we can recognize the public for non-agenda items. All right. Seeing no one. Game face. Let me get my game face on. I want to, yes, we're going to get there to private session. We have one.
Yes.
Yeah, I'll be there. I'm not done quite yet. But it's funny, I was trying to think about what I wanted to say tonight. I was reminded of how my mother would, as we would get out of the car to go somewhere, she would say, "Now don't forget to say your manners." And it occurred to me tonight I need to say my manners, because there's a lot of folks I need to thank. First, my husband, who is actually sitting here tonight. 8.5 years is a really long time to have your wife go, "Leave the dishes, I'll get them later." Or he can't get home from work and I'll say, "You'll need to pay the sitter when you get home." And all the homework and all the other things that you did. Ooh, so I could sit here. So thank you. And I need to say thanks to my kids, who no doubt are home doing homework.
No doubt.
No doubt. They have been incredible. Not that I would recommend it as a parenting method, but boy, are they independent. They are able to figure out a solution when things get a little dicey. And I need to say thanks to my friends and neighbors who, in so many ways, have picked up the slack when I've been sitting here. I have two quick stories to tell. Early on, when I started, I hired a sitter from down the street. She was, I can't honestly remember if she was a sophomore or a junior. I'm going to say sophomore only because of what happened. We tend to go late at night sometimes, and I had left the sitter walking up the stairs with my sweet little children who were ready for bed, had their dinner, and by the time I got home, her dad was sitting on my couch because we had gone so long. So it really does take a village. And then some nights, it just didn't always work when the sitter showed up, and I still needed to be here. So I would leave them the cell phone, I'd have one, and my pocket would vibrate. Didn't happen very often, but a couple of times, and one was when the transformer at the end of the driveway exploded, and my children had been farmed out to the neighbors, and they were fine. By the time I got home, I don't live that far. So thank you to everyone who has made this work. And lastly, the phrase that I've heard so much over time, and really in the last few weeks, is, "It's such a thankless job." That is just not true. I cannot tell you how much I've gotten out of this, how much I've learned, and believe it or not, how many people have said thank you since November the 1st. Oh, so thank you all very much for your notes and your emails and your calls. And lastly, here we go. I want to thank the incredible staff and the teachers who I've gotten to work with. Truly dedicated, smart people who care about our children. And the board members that I've served with. Bar none. I'll put it up next to any group that gathers. Y'all are it. You're as smart and you're as able as any group of people. And by golly, when y'all are ready to get something done, it's going to happen. So I can't tell you the privilege it has been to serve with those sitting at the table and those I have sat with the table with in the past. It has been my honor to be here, and I thank you so much. All right. Oh.
Not so fast.
There's more,
Oh, good, because I'm
Party
doing so
gifts.
well.
but don't worry, we'll do the talking. We want to thank you, Julia, for everything you've done. And we have a resolution by the board, and it's rather lengthy because you've done quite a bit. But I think I would be remiss not to read all of it because it's quite a distinguished presentation. Resolution from Westfield, New Jersey Board of Education. Whereas Julia Walker has served with dedication to the children, families, and community members of Westfield for 8.5 years on the Westfield Board of Education. And whereas as president of the Westfield Board of Education, Julia Walker has provided leadership, vision, intelligence, grace, and compassion. And whereas as chairperson of the Finance Committee from 2008 to 2011, Julia Walker provided critical analysis and clear communication leading to successful public support of the district's annual budgets. And whereas as chairperson of the Policies Committee for 5 years, Julia Walker diligently organized the revision and approval of dozens of district policies in accordance with state regulations and district practices. And whereas as a member of the Long Range Planning Committee for 7 years, Julia Walker provided scrutiny and prudence during a critical period of enrollment growth and facility utilization in the district. And whereas as a member of every other major committee of the board, including curriculum instruction and programs, facilities, negotiations, and ad hoc technology, and a liaison to the New Jersey School Boards Association, the Union County School Boards Association, Westfield Town Council, Parent Teacher Council, Westfield Recreation Commission, Westfield High School, and Wilson School, Julia Walker gave countless volunteer hours to serve the 6,300 students in the Westfield Public Schools. Now therefore, be it resolved that this Board of Education recognizes Julia Walker for her outstanding service and leadership on the Westfield Board of Education. And whereas this resolution be presented to Julia Walker on November 22nd, 2011, and that a copy of this resolution attesting to the appreciation of the Board of Education become part of the official minutes of this meeting. Thank you.
Very much. Thank you. Oh, gosh.
More?
There's
More?
more. Oh, good.
So, no doubt, several of us want to say a few words tonight for Julia. So I'll be brief, and then I'll turn the floor over to others. In 2003, Julia Walker ran for a one-year term of office for the Board of Education. Fortunately for the town of Westfield, that turned out to be the longest one-year term of Julia's life. More importantly, the students of Westfield have benefited in unquantifiable ways from the many hundreds of hours that Julia has spent for their benefit. And that has been her objective from day one, to make the district a better place for all of our children to learn and to grow. Now, I know that Julia always hates it when I quote her back to her, but I think this time it's actually appropriate. When Julia ran for office back in 2003, she described herself as follows. Mrs. Walker is a mother of two, a kindergartner and a second grader who attend Wilson Elementary School. Both of those kids now attend high school. And somehow, through all of those years, Julia found a way to run a family, raise her kids, and maintain the high caliber of work for the district that we will always remember her for. It would take a tremendous amount of time for me to list out all of the boards and committees that Julia has served on over the years, not to mention listing out all of her accomplishments. So I put together something that I hope Julia will find more meaningful and that she'll keep as a reminder going forward of just how long she has served Westfield and of the many great contributions she has made. Julia, this
Oh my gosh.
is your life on the Westfield. So for people in the distance, what this is, it's the resolution that we just read, and it's a picture of all of the boards that Julia has served on. Some of them are multiple years, given they were the same board, starting from 2003 to 2004, all the way around to the present board. And every one of us took the time to sign it, past and present board members, and we thank you very much.
Oh, thank you all so much.
All right, with that, Julia, I am sad you're leaving the board, but I know that I can always call you my friend.
Yes, you can.
I'll turn it over.
Oh, God.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Well, as I know you like to keep things brief, I just want to say what a true privilege this has been to serve on the board with you. I have learned a great deal from you, and even though we at times, let's say, have slightly different views, I have learned, unlike our Congress, to put personal views aside and make progress. So it's in this light that I present to you tonight, with a little help from two very important Marks in the world, Mark Zuckerberg and Mark Friedman, a dream come true,
Oh God, you got me a Facebook page.
a mock-up of your own personal Facebook page, with all 9 of us as your new Facebook friends. And I am told this is very big in Romania.
Yes,
Romania.
we outsourced that to Romania.
Do you frame your Facebook page?
Absolutely, and since we knew that probably Jersey Shore and M&M were two things that you might like, they're set as your entertainment.
Perfect.
All of your favorites.
You know,
Thank you very
that's
much.
what I want. Wow, this is more than I can ask for. All the Facebook.
All right, you just want to go around?
Sure.
Okay. Julia, you are going to be deeply missed. And I especially am going to miss Julia's catchphrases, which I lovingly call Julia-isms. Most of them I never heard of before, but they were always just so spot on. And I want to thank you. I want to thank you for your time and your listening ear and your dedication and for challenging me as a board member. I want to thank you for helping me and for making me a better and stronger member of the Board of Education. And then I did this at nursery school on my little note paper from school. And I teach poetry to kindergartners. So then I had a brilliant idea of doing a little acrostic poem for Julia. So bear with me. J is because you are just fabulous. U because you are unflappable. L, I had two. One, you're a lovely lawyer.
Alliteration.
Alliteration, well done. And you love shoes. I, as you did for me tonight, you always help me to put things into context. And you have great integrity. And A, my favorite, it's all good. It's all good. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
That was good.
I know. Julia, it has been my honor to have served with you on this board for the past 8.5 years. I would especially like to remember our 3 years together as the leadership team. And when I was president, you were vice president. We tackled many tough issues and faced many storms together. And as we did, you will remember that in many of our conversations, we didn't start out seeing eye to eye. In fact, it was almost guaranteed.
There's a theme to these comments.
No matter the topic, we would start from totally different points of view. At first, our conversations were debates, and I remember we practiced patient tolerance. We evolved into active listening, mostly in front of no one. And we finally reached broader understanding and strong acceptance as we realized that we brought differences to our topics, but we were both grounded in and shared traditional values and high expectations for the best possible outcomes for the community and our schools and each and every Westfield student. Our conversations were animated. Our opinions were heartfelt, maybe unbudgeable at first. Our exchange was always respectful and always ended with better decisions and deeper understandings. And often they ended with you saying, all good. Westfield Public Schools, our community, and all our children, and I have benefited from your dedicated and selfless service for the past 8 years. Thank you. It has been a pleasure. It has been my honor to have shared this time with you, and to have worked with you and learned from you, and so best wishes and blessings for your success in the future, my friend. You know I'll always have your back, and it's all good, and I'll miss you.
I'll go. It's just short. This one's very short and sweet. Julia, although we've not worked together for very long, I've seen how dedicated and passionate you are with respect to the children of Westfield and the school board. On behalf of all the parents in town who have no idea how much time you volunteered over the last 8.5 years towards the betterment of our educational programs, please accept our thanks for a job well done. Good luck as you move into the next phase of your career.
I just wish I had more time to disagree with you. Since everybody at the table has had that fine opportunity.
Sometimes it takes a while for everybody to see the light.
Yeah, I would consider that as well. And you will be missed. And enjoy the next challenge.
Thank you very much.
Mrs. Walker. I just want to thank you for your friendship and your leadership. And although we didn't always agree, 3 things that I'll remember about you the most, and I think we can all learn from and have learned from. I think Jane said it with the U. It was very, very cute. Unflappable. The grace under fire is something that's hard to replace and hard to find. Also, I think in conversations where it got a little bit heated, I think one of your key strengths is always keeping focused on the goal and always finding a solution. That reasonable people that come together that have the greater good in mind will always do that. And I think that's one of your strongest suits. And then thirdly, I think they talk about transferable skills, and even though you were in a volunteer position for 8.5 years, I think that your work on the board and the work that we all do has prepared you very well for your next phase of your life. So our loss is Atlantic Health Systems' gain. And I'll try mine. It's all good.
Well, Jill, you must have said that a lot, because I wrote it on the poster. I just want to
The end of the all good chapter.
I just want to wish you the best of luck, and instead of looking backwards, looking forward, I just want to say that you're an inspiration to all of the women who are actually hoping to go back to work someday. I mean, this is work, but full-time employment. So you are an inspiration in that sense as well.
Thank you
will
very
be
much.
missed.
Board members in there.
Oh, yeah, no, I thought you.
No.
Oh, sorry. I know there are members in the audience who may want to say a few words. Feel free if you want to.
That's what this is for.
It's going to continue here.
I didn't prepare anything. I have no paper.
State your name
State
and
your
your
name.
So my name is Richard Solomon, 728 Embry Crescent. Actually, the theme about not always agreeing, the bottom line is, for us anyway, we came to some issues from different perspectives, but we always ended up in the same place. And it was always motivated by what was best for the children. And that's something that's going to be very hard for this board to replace in you. So thank you. And then I just want to close by saying that, I worked a full-time job and juggled a family and did this board for 9 years, so you have no excuse.
Half a year.
And finally,
Gosh, thanks for coming, Richard.
and the only other thing I want to say is that I think you're going to find your life much less stressful, at least in terms of what was most stressful for me, actually, aside from the difficulty of some of the issues we faced, was actually just getting here sometimes. So I think you're going to find your life is much simpler after tonight. But thank you for everything that you've done, and the community thanks you. I mean, even though they might not know it. The Westfield, the 6,300 students who are in the school system now and the thousands who preceded them owe you a tremendous amount of thanks. So thank you.
Hi, Gary McCready, 39 Mohican. So many have said so many great things. I could just repeat them all. I feel great, but as I know, as you know, there's like lots of things that that you missed. When you're up here, and things that even you don't know that you missed, and I guess as I feel I had to, and you do that, things change and you have to move on, and it's different priorities. But while I worked with you on the board, the various committees, the things that we tackled, it was just really great working with you because among everything else, you looked at it with straightforward, calm demeanor. You understood the issues. Sometimes you even understood me, and that was
It's genius.
But in any case, again, good luck to what you're doing next. I know if you even bring half the dedication that you had while you were on this board to what you're doing now in your full-time job, you'll do fantastic. Thanks again for your service.
Sorry. Hi, my name is Alice Honeycutt, and I live at 14 Stanley Oval. And I also want to just say thank you for all the work that you've done. And not only do I remember our years on the board with compassion for all the kids, but the support that you gave to us as individuals to look at everything and to expand our base has just been incredible. And a little known fact, I actually put Julia down as one of my references as I move forward to this big job that I've had for the last year. And I want to thank her for her encouragement to me. I have never worn so many suits in the last year in my life. But it is all good. So thank you. We need to walk together again soon and look for our weekends because maybe we'll have a few. So thank you.
Beth Cassie, 700 Glen Avenue. For a tiny person, you really know how to dream big. And I can really go back to a point in time when, and I'm going to get choked up talking about this, but when Lincoln School was just an idea, and it was actually a school that was being rented out, and there were a lot of troubles with the school, with the neighborhood, thinking about how to use this asset. And we took a tour of the school, and Julie said, you know, this could be a school again someday. This should be a kindergarten. And at the time, there were very few people who thought that was a good idea. But Julie didn't take no for an answer and just kept, you know, pushing, and we looked at it 100 different ways. It was a different superintendent. It was a different time. There was money to do projects like that. But I think really the biggest thing was to have the dream and to dream big. And even when people said no, when it made sense to keep pushing forward. So I think about that as really a major accomplishment when you were on the board. And I think if this is another big dream, it's a really big deal after being out of the workforce for a decade to take a summer and say, I'm going to pass the New Jersey bar. I'm going to put my life on hold, and I'm going to study. And I'm sure you didn't just pass the bar. I'm sure you passed at over 99%. And I think it's just a real, for everybody who's sitting on this board now and for future boards, is to dream big. You really don't know what the possibilities are. Things are changing. Opportunities are going to be there to take on a project that might be controversial, but it might be the right thing to do. So sometimes just push through that and really do the due diligence because it may be worth the extra work. I'm really happy for you. I'm really happy that through our time serving on the board together, we really formed a friendship. I can't wait to hear about how this next chapter unfolds for you, and I wish you lots of luck.
And I think the adults have certainly all spoken to the wonderful qualities that we know about Julia. But in the end, I really do know why Julia did this. And it was for all of the students in Westfield over the last 8.5 years. So on behalf of the students in Westfield, thank you very much.
You all are so generous. Thank you so much. But not to miss an opportunity. Anybody who's thinking about putting in your application to do this, it is so worth it. The work is hard. They might have mentioned there were a few night meetings. It's so worth it. Please think about sending in your resume, sending in your application by the 30th, and thinking about joining the Board of Ed, because this service is worth all the effort. And I cannot thank you all enough for all your kind words and the time that we've gotten to work together. And it's funny, it's felt like we're moving, but I'm really not going anywhere. I'm just not going to sit here. So thank you all very, very much. And believe it or not, we're not quite done tonight. Yeah. So for my last official act here on the video that gets to go on the website.
Couldn't get out before that.
She tried.
So close.
We disagreed. So, I ask the board to approve the following resolution. Be it resolved that the Board of Education move into private session for the purposes of discussing personnel, litigation, or negotiation, and be it further resolved that any discussion held by the board which need not remain confidential, and the results of the discussion will be made public as soon as practicable. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? We're adjourned. Thank you very much.